in the book of Acts. Paul's shipwrecked on the island of Malta, and it says locals came out to help them. They see him get bitten by a venomous snake and waiting for him to drop dead, thinking, oh, this man thought he was going to escape justice, but here we go. Well, he doesn't die, and then they're like, ooh, this man must be one of the gods. Well, he ends up at the governor's mansion because there's somebody there sick, and they ask Paul to pray for him, and this man gets healed. And there's supernatural healing, and the governor provides for them, like blesses them, cares for them. Paul goes from being shipwrecked on an island to living in the governor's mansion in just a short span of time. And then later, Paul gets to Rome, and it says instead of going into the dungeon and jail, they allowed him to have his own private home, and people could come and go as they pleased. That is an example of prosperity. We see it all through the scripture, that it would go, in John, it says, I wish that you'd be in health and prosper as your soul prospers. It can also be translated that it would go well with you. That no matter how bad it was going for Paul, it was still going well for him. The blessing of God was on him. The favor of God was on him. And yeah, Paul's eventually beheaded, but he was willing to lay down his life for the sake of the gospel. You look at somebody like Rodney Howard-Browne. He went to jail because he refused to shut down his church. It was the faith and prosperity guys. A lot of them were the ones that stood up against the mandates and really helped to shift things in the attitudes in the nation during COVID. And when we're willing to lay down our lives, the blessing of God. And his ministry expanded and exploded exponentially after that. Look at the life of Joseph. Joseph has the favor of his dad, right? But his brothers plot against him. He is sold as a slave, ends up running the master's household. The master's wife lies about him. Joseph ends up in prison, ends up running the prison. And he helps out a couple of guys there about their dreams, right? One guy's executed, like Joseph said, and the other one's sent back to the king, and they forget about him. But in the course of time, right at the right time, God's timing, Joseph's recommended to the king to interpret the dream, comes up with a strategy for the kingdom, and he's promoted to prime minister, with Pharaoh being the only one above him. So no matter how bad or dark or terrible things are, prosperity is there in the darkest of times. It's more than just a big house, fancy cars, loads of money. It's the favor and blessing of God on your life, that no matter how difficult and bad and terrible things are, you're still sitting on top. You might be the one running the prison. You might be, right, shipwrecked on an island and end up living in the governor's house for a while. Listen, the favor and blessing of God is for you at all times, in all seasons. We just lay down our lives and surrender to the will of God.